Hey everybody, welcome to the fourth and final workshop of our mentor program. I am so sad that this is our final workshop, but I'm so excited for you all to jump into this final workshop. We've got a lot to cover this evening. We've got an amazing guest speaker for you this evening. I think you're going to really enjoy this. Now, this workshop is all about how to make the most out of that first internship. How do you make the most of that first internship or first job? Maybe you're jumping into a full-time job, you're a senior, you're graduating, maybe you're hopefully jumping into an internship. Even if you're not jumping into an internship, maybe you're working on a part-time job that you want to make the most out of for the summer. That's okay too. This workshop is all about how can you make the most out of that first opportunity over the summer so that you can really set yourself apart. By the way, if you have a part-time job and you don't have an internship, there are plenty of ways that you can go about setting yourself apart in that part-time job that could lead to internships down the road. Seriously, do not settle and do not sell yourself short for the network that you could create from any particular opportunity. I know that I could tell you that back in the day when I was a server and bartender, I met plenty of people that ultimately opened up doors for opportunities that I ended up taking advantage of later. You never know who you will meet, even in the jobs you think are not your main thing. It's understandable, but leverage it. Don't ever write any potential connection off. So, as you all know, my name's Garrett. I'm the founder of Ambition in Motion. This workshop's going to be about 50 minutes long. Please ask any questions you have. If you have any questions in the comment section, as you all know, I'm gonna ask 3 questions during the duration of this workshop. Your job is to answer them within 24 hours of this workshop going live. I don't necessarily know exactly what the questions are going to be. I always prompt them based on our guest speaker. Sometimes I'll slip in an intro question during this segment here. It just depends how I'm feeling for the day. So I'm so excited for you all to jump in, learn from our guest this evening. I'm so excited to learn your answers to the questions that we ask you, and I'm so excited to engage with you all. Now, I really want to set the expectations. As you all know, you're not going to get an internship handed to you on a silver platter. That's just not how this program works. Now, by the way, have students landed opportunities at Google, major investment banks, major engineering firms, major marketing firms? Absolutely, happens all the time. But have they done that as a result of meeting with their mentor, taking advantage of the things that they've learned through this program? Yeah, absolutely. But if you think this is going to get handed to you on a silver platter, I think you already know by now that's just not how this program works. You have to work for the things that you get. Now, this platform can be a springboard for you to get to where you want to be. Leverage this as an opportunity to really launch your early career path. Absolutely, yes, this is something that can really do make a huge impact on you getting to where you want to be. But this is not a handout. This is not something that is just given to you. This program could be critical to you really setting yourself apart compared to your peers. Take advantage of it. I really think that you're going to enjoy what we have to say in this workshop this evening. Now, I really want to talk about the intentionality of feelings, because here's the thing. At the end of the day, how you make someone feel in a given moment is going to really impact how they feel about you down the line. So I want you to just take a quick moment on a piece of paper or on your phone. I want you to identify, how do you want other people to feel about you? So when you're going into that first job, that first internship, that first part-time job, how do you want your boss? How do you want your colleagues? How do you want your peers? How do you want other people to feel about you? Write it in the comment section. Write it down on a piece of paper. I want to know, how do you want other people to feel about you? Because that intentionality is so key. It is so key, because here's the thing. If you don't write this down, if you don't set out an intention for how you want other people to feel about you, they are going to perceive you in any which way that you may feel on that given day. And that could be a good thing. It could be a bad thing. If you're having an off day and you're thinking to yourself like, oh man, like, I'm having a rough day, you can let that spew on other people. It happens all the time. And people come up with excuses for it. You might say, hey, my dog died earlier today, or I just found out my grandma's got cancer, having a rough day. And don't get me wrong, there's not an excuse for having a rough day, but you've got to be able to realize that as a professional, you've got to put on multiple different hats to get yourself in the zone to make the most out of it. So no matter what's going on with your world, you can't let your personal world affect your business world. And if you do, it's going to potentially negatively impact the way that other people feel about you. But if you set an intention right now about how you want other people to feel about you, you're going to put yourself in a much better situation. If you think to yourself, I want people to think about me as dependable and reliable and someone that's always upbeat, confident and excited when it comes to work, it doesn't matter what's going on with your outside world. Even if the worst thing could have possibly happened in your outside personal world, if you set yourself an intention right now that that's how you want other people to feel about you, when you come into work, you're going to straighten yourself up because you've already identified, I don't want people to feel sad, bad, or like that I'm a charity case because I've got other things going on in my outside world. You want other people to feel like you are a rock, that you are someone that they can go to, that you are someone that's always showing up professionally. Boom. You will get yourself into the mindset ready to be successful. Now that leads to the 3 keys that we cover in every workshop for success in this mentor program, which is strategy, story, and state. And as I just said, it doesn't matter what's going on in your outside world. It doesn't matter what the state of the world is. If you are a rock, if you are someone that physically comes into a state conducive for being successful every single time, you will be successful. I promise you that. So what I want to do right now is I want to get you into a state conducive for being successful. I want you to stand up, and I want you to shake it loose. I want you to shimmy it out. I want you to let it go. I want you to scream at the top of your lungs. On the count of 3, scream 1, 2, 3. Yeah! Just let it out. Let it loose. Let it go. You're getting yourself pumping. You're getting blood flowing to your brain. You're releasing endorphins. You're getting yourself ready to be successful. The reason why that is so key is because no matter what is going on in your world, you can drive your emotions with your motions. Your motions drive your emotions, meaning that if you get out, you move, you do a power pose, you get crazy, you can get yourself in a state conducive for other people wanting to be around you. You can get yourself feeling good, even if you don't want to feel good. Even if you think to yourself, I just want to remorse for a little bit. I just want to be sad for a little bit. You can be sad on your own time, but when it comes to work time, you step your game up. And the way that you step your game up, you get your emotions and you turn them into positive emotions. I can tell you that right now. Even when you don't want to feel on your best self, your emotions can get yourself into an emotional state conducive for being successful, even if it's only for a temporary period of time. I promise you, your emotions, getting moving, getting running, getting going, getting just shaken out, will get yourself successful. And that will be a huge catalyst for you being successful on the job, standing apart from other people. Because everyone else is going to wonder, like, man, how are you able to stay upbeat, positive, just like a go-to person every single time while other people are taking sick days or just having off days? And you can tell, everyone can tell. It's because you are making an intention to be that way before you come into work every single day. It's critical. Now, the next key is your story. What's the story you tell yourself? Now, that's a big point of the intentionality. What is the story you tell yourself for why you're going to be successful? If you tell yourself a negative story like, hey, you know what? I don't deserve to be here. I'm not qualified. I'm just honestly, I don't even know why I'm in the room. If that's a story you tell yourself, that is the outcome that will be perceived by other people. But if you tell yourself a story, man, I can do this, I can make an impact, I can learn from these people, I can engage, I can be the energetic person who does what it takes, works the hardest to get to where I need to be. If you come in with that mentality, you can be successful. Now, the last key is your strategy. What are you going to do to make sure that you set yourself apart from your peers? Now, there's a few things that we talk about with our guest speaker, but there's a few things that I would love to discuss with you right now. The first one is what is focal is causal. This is popularized by the work of Dr. Robert Cialdini. Essentially, what it means is that whatever is seen is perceived, which means that it is all optics. By that, I mean, if your supervisor, if your boss, if your CEO sees you showing up early for work, working hard on projects, taking initiative, they will attribute the success of the entire intern team to you. But if they see you on your phone, on social media, doing something lazy, just doing things that are not, like spreading gossip at the water cooler, not working when you should be working, anything that could be perceived as negative, if they see that, they will perceive that just as likely as they do the hardworking stuff. So it is really critical that whatever people see about you, whoever you want to make sure that you impress, that they see the type of person that you want to portray, and that they do not see the type of person you do not want to portray. You will think to yourself, man, I wonder how does XYZ person get promoted over another person? I can tell you how. It's that they are seen doing good work while the other people are not seen doing good work. Make sure that you're seen doing good work. In fact, what I always find the most interesting about this research of Dr. Robert Cialdini is its extrapolation to other areas of life. What he's observed in his research is that when cameras, especially in police interrogations, are facing any particular person, whether that be the police officer or the suspect, when the camera is facing the person, one particular person, a jury is much more likely to attribute negative feelings towards that person if the camera is facing them. So if the camera is facing a suspect in an interrogation, the jury is much more likely to attribute guilt on the party of the suspect than they are to think that the cop is asking leading questions, trying to get an answer that may not actually exist. However, flip it around. When the camera is facing the police officer, not the suspect, the likelihood that the jury is going to think that the cop, the police officer, is asking leading questions, trying to get an answer that may not actually be essentially the guilt of the person who's under interrogation, it essentially increases substantially more. The point I'm trying to make is that when what people see is what they perceive. So at the end of the day, if God forbid you're ever in a police interrogation situation and you notice that the camera is rolling, at the best you want to make sure that the camera is side by side equally to you both, or not facing you and facing the police officer. It's crazy how much of an impact that has on how people perceive other people. But more importantly, as it pertains to the workplace, make sure that people see you doing good work and not see you doing bad work. It's not a tit for tat type of thing. One bad deed is about 10 good deeds worth. You have to really, really make sure that you're not seen doing anything bad, or you are going to be on the shit list of your supervisor. And that's not a place you want to be. So the next thing that I want to talk about is this theory called the next in line theory. Essentially what this says is that when somebody is talking or about to speak, their likelihood of retaining any information before or after their speech is very low. So if you know that your supervisor is about to give a presentation, or someone that you really look up to, maybe you are about to see a keynote speaker, you're thinking to yourself, I love this keynote speaker, I love what he or she has to say, I want to go up to him or her after their speech. Bad idea. Here's why. People, when they speak, are much more likely to think about what they just said if they just finished giving a speech, or what they're about to say if they're about to give a speech. Their likelihood of retaining any new information is very minimal. So therefore, you need to give the person you're trying to make a positive impression to a leeway period before you bring up new information to them, because that will increase the likelihood that your message is actually going to resonate in their mind. But if you come up to them right before a speech or right after a speech that they just gave or are about to give, their likelihood of remembering what you said, very low. So just something to keep in mind. This also applies to a boss who's giving a speech, any colleague that's giving a speech, anybody who's about to speak publicly for anything. Make sure you don't talk to them immediately before or afterwards, because they're not going to remember what you said. So the last thing that I want to touch on is this concept called matching and mirroring. This is a great key for building rapport in the workplace, especially for someone who's got negative body language. So I think we've touched on this before in the past, but you should not have your arms crossed when you're at the workplace. It conveys that you're closed off and that you're not open to learning new information. But there's a lot of people that have bad body language in the workplace. There's going to be a lot of people that will cross their arms to you. Can you cross back? The answer is yes. And I know this might sound crazy, but people feel a subconscious connection to others that they are similar to. And this can be in your mannerisms and your speed of speech. Not your dialect of speech, but your speed of speech. So if somebody has a very thick Southern accent and you try to emulate that Southern accent, but you don't actually have a Southern accent, they're going to sniff that out immediately. It's going to be perceived as inauthentic. But if someone's talking really quickly and you're saying, I'm going to work on that, boss, I'm going to make sure I get that done, I'm going to work on it right away, they're going to think to themselves like, man, here's a sense of urgency, someone who's really with it. That's awesome. But instead, if you respond by saying, yeah, boss, I will get to it, and I will make sure that I get those assignments complete, they're going to be thinking to themselves, what the heck is wrong with this kid? Like, what does he not like get it? The sense of urgency? It's crazy how your speed of speech is actually perceived so similar together. So if you notice that someone talks really quickly or really slowly, following their speed of speech, matching and mirroring their speed of speech can actually help you build rapport with them. The other key is other body language. So like I said, crossing your arms. If someone's playing with their chin, you can play with your chin. Don't try to be overly obvious about it, but you can do it subtly. So if someone's playing with their ear, you can play with your ear. And I know it may sound crazy, but you can try this with a friend who's never heard this before. Go up to them, see if they've got any mannerisms. Maybe they're using their hands like this a lot. Emulate those hand gestures, and then all of a sudden introduce a new gesture. All of a sudden, maybe start playing with your nose. It could be any gesture, honestly. Start playing with your nose. Do it. First, emulate their hand gestures for about 5 minutes. Then introduce a new gesture. Watch what happens. They're going to start playing with their nose. They're going to start emulating the new gesture that you have now introduced. It's crazy. It's fascinating how it works, but it builds rapport between other people in the work environment. I think those are some really critical tips for you to know. The last thing that I want to leave you with is the 30 and 90-day rule. The 30-day rule is for an internship. When you first get into an internship, this is, by the way, this was, by the way, a Fortune 500 CEO taught me this tip. And that was, when you first go into an internship, meet with your supervisor and ask him or her the question, what did the best intern you ever have do to set themselves apart? On the very first day, ask that question. They're going to tell you exactly what they want you to do to set yourself apart. For the next 30 days, go ahead and do it. Don't complain. Don't ask questions. Don't share any professional goals you've got for yourself. Just go ahead, put your head down, work hard. After 30 days, you have built credibility with this person. You can then say, hey, boss, would you be open to having a conversation? I would love to share with you some of my professional goals. Boom. That's where you share some of your professional goals. That's where you say, hey, I'm interested in connecting with people in these areas or these types of fields or these types of industries. And because you've earned credibility, they will help you get there. Why? Because you've earned that credibility. But if on day one you ask for that and you've earned no credibility, they're not going to do it. Or if they do, they're going to only do it on a light version. You're not going to get the full force of how they could possibly help connect you. That is something that's really critical. 90-day rule is the exact same thing, but for a full-time job. You get a little bit longer to really build that credibility with your supervisor and your employer. So those are key tips. The last thing I want to just really mention is really starting to help you get into a routine. I know that the best way to learn anything is to actually teach it. So what I want you to do is I want you to find somebody. This could be a friend. It could be a peer. It could be a classmate. It could be anybody. Teach them something that you learned in this program. Teach them anything you learned in this program. We know that students who tell at least, we know that students who tell at least 20 people something that they learned in this program, that their likelihood of landing the job, the internship, getting to a graduate degree increases exponentially. We know that the more people a student tells, the more likely they're able to do that. What we've identified as 20 is that magic number. And this doesn't necessarily have to be you teaching them a full seminar of anything we taught. It could be literally you bringing up casually in conversation, like, hey, I learned about this thing called matching and mirroring. It's really fascinating. Boom, that's it. That's one person. Or multiple people if you're in a group. But what we've learned is that the more people you tell, the more likely you are actually going to retain this information, the more likely you are going to actually apply it into your professional life, and the more likely you are actually to achieve the goals you have set for yourself professionally. It's crazy how it works. It's a network effect. It really does make an impact. So I want to challenge you that after this workshop, you go out, you identify a friend, you teach them something you learned in this program, and its likelihood of sticking increases exponentially. I really want to challenge you to do that. This is our final workshop. I'm really excited for what you are able to accomplish over the summer. I would really encourage you to be in the program next semester. You're going to get a new mentor. We're going to have new speakers. We're going to talk about new content. I think you're going to really enjoy it and really springboard your career into another level. I think you're going to really enjoy that. Thank you all for being here. Have a wonderful rest of this workshop. I look forward to seeing you on the next part.
Hey everybody, welcome to our workshop this evening. I'm so excited to dive into our topic, how to manage conflict at work. So if you're a student, you might be thinking to yourself like, okay, I'm going to be entering the workforce. Maybe I'll handle my fair share of conflict, but really what is there to expect when it comes to actually what am I going to encounter when it comes to the workplace? Or maybe you're already in your career. Maybe you're already in your professional environment. You're like, oh yeah, I faced conflict before and it did not go well. Or maybe you were able to handle it really well. Either way, we've got a great guest speaker with us here today. We've got Brad Ferrell. Brad is the principal for Hull & Cannar. He has done some amazing stuff in terms of leading his team. He's also done some amazing things and learned a lot of things when it comes to how to handle conflict at work. So Brad, I guess I'd love for you if you could just maybe elaborate on an introduction of yourself and just share a little bit more background on who you are and what you do.
Sure. I'm Brad Ferrell. I'm the partner at Hull & Cannar, as Garrett mentioned. I've been with the company since 2005. My primary role as I started was in business development, and it evolved over time as the company's direction changed. And we really honed in on what our vision was for building a company where people could come to work, feel fulfilled, accomplish things, and work together as a team to achieve goals. So through that involvement, one of the challenges that our founder charged me with was bringing the team together. And I said, well, what does that mean, David? And he said, I need people that don't work in silos, that they work for a common cause, a common goal. So it led me to doing a lot of studying, researching, finding some coaches and mentors that could really teach me how to help people communicate where maybe their individual styles or personality types don't lead to the easiest conversations in the workplace.
Yeah. Well, let's talk about it. Let's just dive right in. Can you share an example of, well, actually, maybe before you share an example, I'd love if you could just tell me your story. How did you get to this point within Hole and Kanar in the first place? Like, what did you do before Hole and Kanar? How did you get here? How'd you work into this role? And in your process of getting to this point, what did you learn about conflict? Where were there times where maybe you had a boss that maybe you didn't see eye to eye with? Maybe you didn't have a scenario like that. I don't know. But what were times where you maybe had a colleague or someone where there were just some conflicting perspectives, and in your route to getting to where you're at, it helped propel you to how you got here, and maybe some learning lessons on the way that maybe had you had the chance to redo it over, you would have done it differently.
Sure. So prior to Hole and Kanar, gosh, which was a lifetime ago now, I was always in some type of business development role, variety of industries, bouncing around. And I came into this business because I loved what they were doing for people. They actually were providing funding for, at the time, it was mostly small businesses. Now businesses of all sizes, of course. But the evolution really began with David's vision of let's build this team that I referred to earlier. Well, he saw something in me that I didn't know I had, and that was the ability to maybe take conflict in a different type of definition than what most people are used to. When we think of conflict, we think of, okay, this is uncomfortable, someone's challenging me, we don't see eye to eye, so there has to be a winner and a loser in this conversation. And I don't know, somewhere along my life, some mentor showed up and changed that perspective for me. So I look at conflict more as, okay, we don't have a clear line of communication. We don't agree on either what the intended outcome is or what the pathway is to achieve it. Let's talk about it. Let's see if there's a right answer, instead of me proving to you that I'm better or you proving to me that you're better.
Man, that's a
So
really good point. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no. So David had recognized that in me, and he said, "You need to be able to do this and instill it into the fabric of our culture." And again, I was unqualified for this, man. I mean, who was I to come in and change people's perceptions and views and things like that? So he kept challenging me. So I kept digging in. And again, I went out and I found people who had built successful teams. I found people whose cultures at companies that I admired. And in the beginning, it was just clients that had turned into friends and turned into mentors. And then they would provide their resources. And then their resources would provide their resources. And so you could really dig in. And over time, what happened was you started to see patterns, ways that people would handle things. They might call them by different things, but there was a systematic approach to removing that nervousness or that emotion, that negative emotion that causes people to hesitate when they think of what conflict is. So over time, we began implementing these, and one by one, as you get support from the team, eventually the culture of the team, they drive the behaviors of what's acceptable and not acceptable in times of conflict. It's not up to a person.
I love that. So you brought up a few really good points there. I mean, you brought up building a culture of healthy conflict and how to handle conflict and how to go about empowering team members in terms of a process of how to handle conflict, which I think is super powerful. But you also brought up this concept of winning and losing. And I think that's really interesting because so often we do think of conflict as winning and losing. And sometimes, maybe unbeknownst to us in the moment when we're having that conflict, that what is the real prize of winning this argument right now? I might win this argument, but what does it do to the person that loses the argument right now? Like, how does this impact our relationship moving forward? I think so often we just think that, oh, If I can get someone to buy into my perspective, that's great. Even though they felt unheard, they'll still treat me with the same amount of respect moving forward.
Right. And that's the first step when you look at conflict, whether it's emotionally charged or non-emotionally charged. What is the desired outcome here? What is the best case scenario for all parties involved? If you think, I mean, it can be as simple as a spouse or a girlfriend. Maybe you've been at work, you've had a long day of work, you've been at school, it's a long day of school. You come home and your significant other, as soon as you open the door, there's no hi, there's no nothing. It's like the kids or the dogs are yours. I'm done. Well, there's a lot of different ways to handle that, right? If I say, geez, I had a terrible day too. Maybe I need a break or a breather. What's going on? That conversation is going to go one way, and it's probably going to last for days, maybe even weeks, and linger on. But nurture is always the answer. It's completely different if I show up and I say, oh my gosh, you seem really stressed. How can I help? What do we need to do here? It's a completely different conversation at that point.
Totally. Yeah, and not only that, but I mean, it's a perfect example. I love that example you just gave because it also applies to the workplace too. But yeah, you come home, you think you've had a stressful day, your significant other says, "Hey, you're on the kids, you're on dinner, you're on the pet duty, just take it over, I'm exhausted." If you go ahead and say, "Whoa, whoa, 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 I've had a difficult day as well. You got to be doing this stuff. No way. Like maybe we can split it."
Mm-hmm.
But like if you end up trying to win that argument, what does that do to your relationship moving forward with that person? Probably not great things. But to your
Mm-hmm.
point, if you can help them feel heard, if you can help them feel acknowledged, if you can understand where they're coming from, you can at least get to a point of mutual understanding, which is oftentimes where people just want to come from. People, more often than not,
Mm-hmm.
just want to feel heard or acknowledged or recognize that their perspective is considered in a scenario and not just trampled on.
And they want to collaborate. They want to work towards something together with other people for efficiencies and sense of accomplishment and that. So if you extrapolate that example over to the workplace, there's going to be times people get charged because maybe they're speaking in a way that you're not understanding, or you're speaking in a way that they are not understanding. Those emotions get high. You can respond by raising your voice and yelling back, or you can respond with, "Hey, you seem really upset. What's going on? I don't want you to be upset. What are we working towards here? How can I help?"
Yeah, no, I like that. So let me take a moment to ask the students a question real quick. Post in the
Mhm.
comment section. When it comes to conflict, whether it be personally or professionally, what is the desired outcome that you would like to achieve from that conflict, argument, whatever frustration that you might be encountering? What is the desired outcome that you'd like to achieve? And how do you plan to get that outcome? Post in the comment section. I'd love to learn about that. So, Brad, can you share with me an example of when you've had to handle conflict at work? What happened? What did you do right? What did you do wrong?
Sure, sure. So during early COVID, we hired our first employee in, gosh, at the time it would have been 19 years. I guess we'd been in business. Hired our first employee totally remote, totally without ever meeting in person. We had to, right? We couldn't get together. So through a series of video interviews, we made the decision to extend an offer to this employee. Very, very bright student, was just finishing up at Purdue University. Fast forward 6, 7 months, we're able to get back in the office. Things are going great, but there's a personal behavior, a negative personal behavior that's impacting the team in such a negative way that it became palpable to everyone, and no one knew how to address it directly with the individual. Um, you may or may not have heard of Kim Scott's quadrants of radical candor. So a lot of people fall into what's called ruinous empathy, where they would rather not hurt someone's feelings than share information with them that's helpful to them because they think it might harm them in some way. Guilty of it. And in this example, I'll share with you why. But I ended up deciding that I was going to choose the quadrant of radical candor, which is challenge directly and care personally. So I went to this individual and I said, "Hey, I have something that I need to share with you for the betterment of you, the betterment of the team, and just overall, I think it's something that you would want to know. You may not even be aware of it. I said, it's going to be uncomfortable for both of us. So please be patient as I stumble through this too. And I went on to share what was happening and how that behavior was impacting the team. And what I did right, I think, was showing up in a way that was nurturing. It was caring. He did not take it personally at all. He thanked me. What I did very wrong was I waited months to do it because I didn't think I knew how to do it. And as we continued talking, after the thank you came the kick in the butt when he said, I wish you would have said something because I wouldn't have had to been embarrassed for this amount of time. Now everybody knows it's a problem. And I said, you're exactly right.
Yeah, that's a great example. I really appreciate that. There are so many things that you shared in that example that I really loved. And one was the immediacy of feedback. So when you're in a position at work and you've got a scenario where you're facing conflict, immediately give the feedback to that person. Do not wait, because the more you wait, the more it potentially gets ingrained. And this is something that I'll often see with behaviors and habits. So let's say you're an employee, or you're a manager, or whatever you are within your organizational hierarchy. You might have somebody who does something to you that frustrates you, and you think, oh, I'll wait till the annual performance review to give my feedback and let them know that's how I feel. But that is not the time to do that, because up until that point, habits are forming. And so now if somebody is like, oh, this is a better way for me to work, I'm just going to keep doing it this way, unbeknownst to this person, because they've never received any feedback to the contrary, it's really frustrating somebody else at the team. But they're waiting for some annual performance review that'll happen in 4 months for them to give you that feedback. And so in that 4-month time, you're building this habit, and now you get the feedback. You're like, I've been doing this for 4 months now. I've built a habit. This is for me to change back would be very frustrating and hard. And now it creates even more conflict. So I think the immediacy of the feedback is so powerful. Another thing you said that I really loved was the way you began the conversation, which was, hey, this is going to be hard for me. This is, this is going to be difficult for you to hear. This is not going to be the easiest one to go over. So I want to set the expectation of what to expect, because it helps get people in a position ready to receive feedback. You don't want to catch anybody off guard. You don't want to be like, hey, how's it going? You doing good? How's the wife, husband, and kids? Okay, by the way, I've been really frustrated at this thing. It's like a total blindside, and then they have no idea, and then they get really frustrated, and they're like, where the heck does this come? It's like you buttered me up, and then all of a sudden you dropped the hammer on me. So the fact that you came in and said, hey, this is going to be difficult. I don't actually know how I'm going to go, I'm going to stumble through this. I love the way that you presented the scenario, because it assumed that you weren't going to be perfect in delivering this feedback, and that it was okay.
Yeah, it sucks, but we're in it together. Let's march through it.
So what is your process for identifying the source of conflict and how to approach the person that is creating the conflict? Like, do you have a process for,
let me respond, and we can edit this if we need to, but that question, identifying the source, triggers me into wanting to place blame. And I rarely think there's blame behind conflict. I think there's a lot of differences in personality types, methods, and people's awareness of what is the desired outcome. Sometimes that doesn't stay the focus because of, either the way they were raised. Maybe they had a tough coach, maybe they had a tough parent, tough boss along the way. So saying, how do we identify the source of the conflict? I would rather look at that from the lens of being curious about, why is it appearing? Why is there conflict? Why is this a struggle? We share a vision, we share methodologies, we're on the same team. Why is there a source of conflict or confrontation? And a lot of times what you'll find out is people are working towards getting it right. They just have a strong conviction over what they think that methodology or what that is, situation on how to get it right instead of being right. But because we're all flawed and we all have these records in our heads, we might show up going, well, the last time this happened, somebody was blaming me for it. So now I'm going to get defensive. I'm going to armor up, and I'm going to show up in a way that we can't get it right because I'm focused on being right. So one of the things that I like to ask, and this is internally, is what is the emotion that I'm feeling? Am I frustrated? Do I feel threatened? What's going on? And then I want to ask, is the story that I'm building around this, why this person is doing this or behaving this way, is the story that I'm building in my head actually true? Or am I just conflating this worst case scenario in an attempt to protect myself even further? So a great way to walk through that, I've found, is ask yourself, what if the exact opposite is true? What if this person is trying to do what's very best for the organization? What if this person's trying to do what's very best for them and for me and for the customer and for the community? And it really can change your ability to stay neutral and stay curious in the moment of where's this coming from.
Yeah. I love the curiosity perspective that you're taking on this. Man, this is your perspective is ringing very true right now. Like literally something I'm going through. I'll just share it. So my best friend and I, and it really like my three best friends and I, but my one best friend who I've been best friends with since I was 2 years old. We've been planning a guys trip for almost a year now. Been planning a guys trip for almost a year, and we're proposing different cities, we're proposing different dates, all these sorts of things. And we really we adjusted very much towards my best friend since I was like 2 years old. We have been he was like, I can only do these dates and I can't go to these cities. Let's do Portland, Oregon. So we ended up choosing Portland, Oregon. We're like, cool, great. We booked the Airbnb. We, are booking the rental car, booking the excursions, all that sort of stuff. And then this morning, he calls me and he says, hey, man, my life is hectic. My life, I can't make the trip. And my original feeling, like literally my feeling right now and of this morning, is really, really frustrated. It's what the heck, we literally chose Portland for you. We chose these dates for you. We did all these things to like accommodate you. So for you not to be in is so frustrating. But I think even as you're saying it, it's taking that deep breath and realizing, taking a period of curiosity of like, well, what's he going through? Well, he's moving to a new house. He's got a wedding the weekend before, wedding the weekend after. He's got his wife he just found out is pregnant. There's just things going on in his world that are just different maybe than when we originally started planning this trip. And yeah, I'm just in the process of taking like a deep breath of empathy and realizing like, okay, he's not trying to do this to spite me. He's not being a flake. He's just got some difficult things going on. And I just need to understand that and be okay with it.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Your desire to understand is driven by curiosity. So
yeah,
one thing you could do there is check his awareness. He might be unaware of the impact. So you could ask him for permission. Hey, is it okay if I have a difficult conversation with you and share with you the impact that this decision's having on myself and the rest of the group? And you follow, they call it the SBI. Here's the situation. We booked these things around your desires and your availability. Your behavior was you made a last second change and pulled out. I need to tell you what impact that has on me, not just from a logistics standpoint, but from an emotional standpoint. You're my best friend. What's going on? And is there anything I can do to help? He may be completely unaware of how important it is that he show up on this trip with you guys.
yeah. No, I mean, so part of it is I feel like I didn't communicate. Even right now, I feel like I didn't communicate how it impacted me. I'm just kind of eating it. You know what I mean? As I went to the straight, how can I support you? You're going through a stressful time. I know you wouldn't have canceled this trip unless you knew it was important. How can I support you? I know you're going through a hard time. I didn't communicate my feelings about the situation.
Yeah,
And
he's not a bad person. You're not addressing the conflict isn't saying you're a bad human. You just did a thing that affected me negatively, and I'd like to share it with you so we can talk about it and hopefully avoid it or resolve it now.
yeah. No, that's right. That's a good point. And that's yeah, that's a good way of looking at it. That's yeah, I'm glad that we're talking about this right now. I feel like this is about as real as it gets in terms of healthy conflict, even if this is a personal example. Because I think what you're sharing is that you can just assume that people have the best of intentions. I think like at all levels, humans are optimized for efficiency, whether it be efficiency for themselves personally or efficiencies for the organization or whatever. So they're going to choose actions that they think are going to be best for them, not necessarily realizing the implications it may have on other people. And so when we encounter a scenario where we get something that's frustrating, it's yeah, it's really powerful. And yeah, no, I already know what I need to do now. This is helpful. No, that's really great. But I think the whole point is assume people don't have malintent. I think sometimes we think about, I've heard people say, oh, well, my boss sucks. He or she is trying to sabotage me. They're trying to make my life miserable. They come into work and they do all these things that they know frustrate me. And it's like, do they know that it frustrates you? Have you actually really communicated that it frustrates you? Or do you just know it frustrates you and assume they know that it frustrates you? Because so often we've never actually had the conversation.
You've never had a conversation, and you keep building that story up in your head, and that story keeps getting more skewed towards the negative. So the reality, the longer that it lingers on, the reality of what the situation is and how bad you think it is or how bad you think the person is, they're worlds apart.
And that is right into my next question of, do you ever find that the person who's creating conflict for you isn't intentionally doing that? And if so, how do you stay open-minded to the outcome?
Vast majority of the time, the person is not intending to do harm to me or the situation. We work with some fantastic people. I mean, these are humans that they love to volunteer, give their time, donate funds, do everything they can for the community, do everything they can for each other as friends, as co-workers and things. It's a remarkable group of people. Yet we still piss each other off plenty of times. It's never I can't think of one time, at least not in the last 10 years, that I thought, man, that person did that to harm me. It's never that way. So it goes back to the thing about curiosity of, first, what's the emotion that I'm feeling? What's going on? What's the story I'm telling myself? And what if the exact opposite was true? What if they just found out a loved one has a terminal illness? What if something just very tragic happened in their lives, and I caught them at the exact wrong moment, and I came in trying to be efficient and was short and snappy with them, and it triggered them, and now I'm blaming them for the situation that we're in. So it all comes back. Yeah, I like what you said too. Take a breath before you respond, but get curious. What's going on?
Yeah. I love to ask the students, post in the comments section. Have you ever had a scenario where you assumed something about somebody that you thought was doing something negatively on purpose to harm you, but ended up realizing that they had no idea that it was harming you? Share the situation in the comments. I love to learn about it. It shows a lot of humility if you can. So is it ever best to avoid conflict? Explain why or why not. Is there ever a scenario where it's like, you know what, it's just best to avoid this?
Yeah, absolutely. And I wouldn't say avoid it, but delay it. If you are emotionally charged to the point you can't find yourself curious, or you find yourself wanting to win an argument, or you want to argue, or you're in front of a group and you have to share some very constructive feedback, which can be construed to be conflict as well, delay it until the timing's right. Delay it until you have a good perspective, you have your wits about you, and you can show up being ready to say, oh, I was wrong. You're right. Okay, let's move forward. There's a rule that we like to use, and it's the, does it need to be said by me? Or I'm sorry, does it need to be said? Does it need to be said by me? And does it need to be said by me right now? And you want to bring that conflict and those difficult conversations. You want to have that as quickly as you can. But if the exact moment doesn't fit those three criteria, then we don't do it in that moment. And there might be something that needs to be said, might need to be said by me. But if I'm upset or I'm frustrated or I'm guarded, it doesn't need to be said by me right now.
Yeah, That's really, really good advice. I think it can be easy to get emotionally charged, and then you say something that you don't mean. And yeah, it's walking that fine line, that fine tightrope of I'm emotionally charged on this situation, yet I still need to communicate my feelings. Like you don't want to be emotionally charged, but you still need to communicate your feelings. And where does that balance? How do you strike that balance? Like what is your process for processing maybe when you feel emotionally charged or frustrated or ticked off, internalize it, and then be able to put it out there in a healthy, constructive way?
So I go back to asking myself the question, if I feel emotionally charged, I ask myself the question, what if the exact opposite were true and I'm just hearing this wrong? And that's how I begin to lower my emotional state. But then it comes back to also situation, behavior, impact. Hey, in this situation, we were working on this problem. When you behaved in this way, it triggered me, and the impact that had was I was unable to even have a conversation where we could hope to move things forward. Can you help me understand what you were what you were intending to say in that moment, and maybe I can hear it in a way that is a little bit more productive for both of us. And there's a lot of vulnerability in that too. You know, it's so easy to armor up and say it's your fault, but that's you at that point you're making the assumption that you're always right and that person's always wrong, and you don't know they're not always wrong. So have the humility to say I'm going to be wrong plenty of times, but let's have an open discussion about it, and learn how to communicate with each other in a way that we can still be productive, we can still enjoy working together, we can still accomplish the goals for individuals and the organization.
Yeah, no, I think that makes tons of sense. Um, yeah, I think that just that genuine curiosity there while facing a scenario where you might be assuming the worst from somebody else can be really helpful. How did you learn all these things? Like, who are your mentors? Who helped guide you to learning some of these outcomes?
Our founder, David Oll, he challenged me to bring a team together and believed in, for some reason, that I could do it when I didn't believe it myself. So what I did is I went out and I found people that I believed had built good teams. They had built good organizations. They had built good cultures. And I just started asking them questions. And through those questions, what I identified was they all had systems. And I'm a guy who hates systems. At the surface level, I hate systems. But one of my mentors said, you don't rise to the level of your goals, you fail to the level of your systems. And that resonated so much with me that, wait a minute, if I know people that have systems to build effective teams and that's my goal, why don't I just emulate these systems? And so that's what I did. But to answer your question, my mentors are a wide group of individuals, some living, some deceased. And these are all people who, one, they're willing to help because they have a true interest in me becoming a better version of myself. They're willing to donate their time and their resources. And a lot of them are of an abundance mindset where these great things and these great this knowledge or these theories or these systems came into their lives, and they feel like it's their responsibility to share that with others so that then they can share it with the next generations as well. So they can be business leaders, it can be spiritual leaders, it can be friends and family, it can be coaches that I've had, it can be stoic philosophers. So it's an endless list. But I
Within that, how do you go about deciphering? How do you go about deciphering what is the right way to handle a scenario? And I'll give you a perfect example. This particularly happens with my relationship with my wife, but there will be times where she shares a challenge with me, and I'll go and I'll not necessarily play devil's advocate, but play like, okay, could there be a scenario in this world where this person's not trying to sabotage you, but instead is trying to act in good faith to the organization and to themselves, and maybe not even realize that the way that they're acting is negatively harming you? And sometimes she'll turn to me and say, Garrett, I don't need solutions right now. I just need you to turn around and just tell me that sucks. Like, there's 2 words that I need you to hear from your mouth, and it's that sucks. I don't need solutions. I don't need alternatives. How do you go about, balancing the empathy, understanding element of things with the solution oriented, hey, maybe they're not coming from the worst place.
Sure.
How do you know about balance? How do you know to balance that and that sort of thing?
Yeah, no, I agree. Like empathy is defined by showing up and saying that sucks. I'll walk through it with you. But it goes back to the curiosity and the asking permission. So that really sucks. What are you going to do about it? And you might get frustrated. I don't know, or I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that. Say, okay, do you, would you want my opinion or do you want help? And if they say no, then it's done. They know that you're there. You're empathetic. You're in the moment. You're being who they need to be in that moment. But at the point that you've asked permission, would you like to know what I think? And you share it, they're a lot more receptive than if you just show up and go, "Oh, you should do this."
That's a
Because
really good
that's not what they want to hear.
That's a great point. And not only that, but what if you encounter a scenario where their reaction is going to be passive aggressive? It's like, oh, well, they did this, so I'm going to now do this because I know it's going to be blah, 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 blah. I'm going to send this an email that starts with the starting line of per my previous message, ABC, whatever. No email. No email was ever received properly if it started with per my previous message. That is one of the most passive aggressive ways to start an email.
Hey, you idiot.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's funny.
But like when you know that they're about to do something, you're like, that's probably not the right move, even though they've already made up their mind. They're like, I don't want your feedback. I'm doing it. And you're like,
So in that situation, asking permission could be construed as I don't know, probably not the best approach.
yeah.
Hey, but you might say, could I offer a solution?
Or even, what do you think the outcome will be when you send that email?
Exactly where I was headed. What is your desired outcome? Do you think that message is going to be most effective or efficient in working towards that? Because what you're talking about is you rewind all the way to the beginning, the very first thing we talked about. When you're emotionally charged, it's going to go south. You're not working toward the desired outcome. You're working towards self-protection.
That's a great point. Yeah, whenever you catch yourself working in self-protection. So who do you go to now? Like, do you have a regular person or people that you go to audit your emotions where you're just like, I'm really charged and I know I'm charged, and like it's bubbling to the surface to act in a way that you don't want to act? Who do you go to now to like guide you during those times?
I call them mentors, peers, trusted confidants, even my spouse sometimes. There's a variety of people that I go to, but it's tough to it's not about being perfect in these moments, right? Nobody's ever going to get it right every time, but it's working towards progress in an effort to be better. But the people that I go to most frequently, one is Coach Brian Kavicki. I think you've met over at Lucian. Tremendous guy. He's taught me a lot about showing up in a nurturing way to help others and to help myself. Another one is one of my coworkers. He has that gift of patience like you can't imagine. So sometimes he can even identify me getting charged before I identify it. And we've given each other permission. Hey, if you see this, call it out. We know we won't get defensive. We'll take it as what it is. We know you have good intentions for it.
I love to ask the students right in the comment section, who are your mentors? Who are your people that you go to when you feel charged and are unsure of how to handle a situation? Post in the comments. Would love to learn that. Yeah, I think, Brad, this advice, this guidance is really, really, really powerful, really, really good. Yeah, I think that self-control to catch yourself and get curious whenever you're frustrated is a really powerful tool, but not easy to implement.
Not at all.
So Brad, this has been great. This has been a wealth of information, a wealth of insights for our students. Are there any final things that you'd like to share with our students before we end this workshop tonight?
Yeah, I applaud everybody that's coming out and leaning into these resources because, we're given the gift of history. It's, through our parents and our experiences, our grandparents, their experiences, our teachers, our coaches, and all these people that we encounter as children. Then we show up as adults into the real world, and we're still using the behaviors that we used as kids to survive. So lean into these resources, find other mentors, get curious, read books, try to understand why you behave the way that you behave, and then apply that towards, well, maybe this person's behaving in a way that they're unaware of, or maybe they're not trying to impact me in a way that I think they are, and I can be less guarded. So yeah, no, I want to say thanks to you, Garrett, for giving me the opportunity. I love having these types of conversations, and it's exciting the work that you're doing and the impact that you're having for these students and workers at these companies.
I appreciate it, Brad. Well, hey,
Yeah,
students, thank you all for being here. Brad, thank you for being here. Have a wonderful rest of your night. See you, everybody.
thanks, Garrett.